All right, this exercise is a little bit tricky, but trust me, it's absolutely worth spending time on it because it trains your programming brain. So we have this function called move, and we use that to move an element in an array. So this is how it works. We give it an array, the index of the element we want to move, and an offset. So in this case, I want to move the first element in this array, that is 1. Now I have passed 0 as the offset. So with this, nothing is going to change. We're going to get the same array. However, if I pass 1 as the offset, see what happens here. So 1 moves 1 position to the right. If I pass 2 as the offset, 1 ends up here. If I pass 3, it ends up being at the end of the array. If I pass anything more than the length of the array, that is 4, I get this error, invalid offset. Now to display errors like this, you should use another method called console.error. So you simply pass a string and that will end up appearing as a red message on the console. Now also note that this offset can be a negative number. So let's say we want to move this second element 1 position to the left. So we set index to 1 and offset to -1. So 2 moves to the beginning of the array. If I pass -2 as the offset, because it can't jump out of the array, once again, we're going to get this error, invalid offset. Also note that in all these examples, the original array is unaffected. So we get a new array with items reordered. So spend 10 to 15 minutes on this exercise. And when you're done, come back, continue watching. All right, so I've reset these numbers to 0 and 1. So we want to move the first element in this array 1 position to the right. The first thing we want to do is to copy this array because we don't want to modify it. So that's where we use the spread operator. I'm going to define a constant called output, set it to a new array, and then I'm going to spread the original array. So this will be a clone of the original array, okay? Now, as part of moving an element, first, we need to remove it from the array, and then we need to place it back at the right position. To remove an element from an array, we use the splice method. You have seen that before, splice. So we go to the given index and delete 1 item. Now look at the return value of this method. It returns an array. So the items that are removed will be returned as an array. In this case, we are removing 1 item, so we can access the first element in that array, and that will return the element that we just deleted. So let's store that in a separate constant. The reason I'm storing it here is because next we need to add this back to the array. Now, we want to add this at a specific position. Once again, we need to use the splice method. So output.splice. Now, where are we going to place this? We want to go to index plus offset. Now, we don't want to delete any items here, so we pass 0. And finally, we pass this element that we want to place in the array. And finally, we return the output. Let's test this. So if we move the first element 1 position to the right, we get the right result, beautiful. If we move it 2 positions to the right, it ends up here. If we pass 3, it ends up being at the end of the array. If we pass 4, we don't get the error that I told you should produce, but the output is still the same. Now to solve this issue, we need to come back here and do some basic validation before running this algorithm for moving an item. So we can do something like this. We define a constant, call it position, that is the new position, right? And that's going to be index plus offset. Exactly the same value we have used here. So we can replace this expression with position. Now we have position. We can check to see if position is greater than or equal to array.length. So in this case, our array has 4 elements. If we pass 4 or a greater value, we should see the error on the console. So here we add the code block, console.error, invalid offset. And finally, we return. So the rest of this function is not executed. The other option would be to have an else block here, but that means we have to put this code inside this block. There's going to be a bit of indentation. This is really unnecessary because if we return here, none of the code here will be executed. So we can get rid of the else keyword as well as the code block and extra indentation. So if we pass 4, we should get the error. Beautiful. Now let's pass 0. So we're not going to move this element. We get the original array. Beautiful. If we pass -1, we get some weird result. In this case, 1 should not jump out of the array. So we need to change our validation logic here to something like this. So if position is greater than or equal to the length of the array, or position is a negative number, then we should display the error. So save the changes. Beautiful. Now let's test this with another value. So I'm going to work on the second element here. So let's change 0 to 1. We're going to move this 1 position to the left, save the changes. 2 comes here. Beautiful. If we pass -2, again, we should get the error. Here is the error. Perfect. Now let's change this back to 0. So we get the original array. If we pass 1, 2 moves here. If we pass 2, 2 moves to the end of the array. If we pass 3, we should get an error. And here's the error. Beautiful.